Valkyrie Elysium is an action RPG developed by Soleil and published by Square Enix, with Tri-Ace, the makers of the rest of the Valkyrie Profile series, sitting in the dugout watching to see if this pinch hitter will be able to hit a home run and bring back the series like an Einherjar warrior in Asgard. You play as Valkyrie, summoned by All-Father Odin to find worthy warriors called Einherjar and 4 treasures with increasingly complex Nordic names in order to prevent the end of the world known as Ragnarok from happening. The game is more of a spiritual successor to Valkyrie Profile, but almost a reboot of the series since nothing from the previous games comes back except, Norse myth and the general story outline. You will fight lots of monsters using weapons, magic, and summons while doing quests, discovering secrets, and moving forward towards your vague goal. It is competent and fun, yet in the end a bit short, full of minor issues and not really worth the $60 price tag. It's about 12 to 15 hours long, and if you do everything, it can be around 20 to 25 hours. If you're interested, yet a bit in the dugout yourself, just wait till the free DLC comes out and maybe a price drop. There is also a PC version coming to Steam in about a month. So let's get thee hence. Oblivion and bad camera angles await thee.
Go in the whole wide world!
There are 2 main areas. Asgard, which is a pretty hallway with a safe spot on one side and Odin on the other, and Midgard, aka Earth, where the game's missions take place. This takes the Neo 2 approach by making a handful of areas that you revisit constantly, so be prepared to see the same places over and over again with slightly different objectives. You chat with Odin and then use the giant globe to choose missions and subquests to do. Missions progress the main story, and subquests let you get new abilities and a lot more. This is almost a pretty game. The forested and outdoor locations can be nice to look at, but usually it's very gray and sparse, especially any area that's supposed to be an abandoned city or anything devoid of life. There's a strange, thick black line that seems to coat the edge of characters and the background at a distance. Maybe this is to make the game look more like a painting, or to divide things like the loaded area and the skybox or any layered polygon edge. I really wish I knew more about video game design. It just looks kind of strange to me. Some of the areas have really forced fog effects in rooms, like an old PS2 game or an early PC game, and the desolate, boring gray environments kind of make you tired. It needs more color, contrast, and vibrance, and not just a cheap overlay effect. You can go back to areas you have already completed to find lost items and explore limited environments, maybe even replay the quest for a better score. But unless you are a completionist, there isn't much desire to go back, but there are 4 endings, so you may have to at some point if you want some of those.
Blah, 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 blah.
The main story is a bit of a slow burn, and as a fan of the previous games and a veteran of JRPGs, I was pretty much able to predict what was going to happen in the story. There just wasn't anything new, and the story was really straightforward. At first you are put in a tutorial where combat mechanics are explained, and then you fight alone for a while until you get your first Einherjar. The Einherjar have personalities, urgency, and backstory that make them important. I like that they have a role and even some influence on Valkyrie's decisions. They will object and question their purpose, and while they eventually have to follow Valkyrie and Odin's decisions, they have enough character development that you actually care about what they have to say and where they are coming from. It's a shame that the story lacks depth because the characters are a good start. I genuinely like the design of the characters as well. They seem to be pretty unique in a game that isn't. I like that there's been a recent push to get a lot of UK-based voice actors, and they do a really great job in this game. Valkyrie also has character motivations that change from being a stoic rule follower without thought to an actual person who makes decisions based on logic and, cryptic visions and stuff.
It's the brain pain, Coat.
She even smiles, sort of. In between missions, you go to Odin, who tells you what to do next, what treasure you are trying to get, etc. But it's obvious that he's keeping secrets from you, and it's not even subtle.
It is because they were once human, but at times they have peculiar notions.
No doubt some part of their humanity still lingers within them. Pay it no mind.
Understood. I shall try.
During the missions, there are lost souls to find in order to learn their demise or their thoughts on the world. They don't teach you much about the world, but sometimes you'll find the occasional one that is funny. It's more of a completionist thing to find them all, but hint hint, the green ones are important. Some of the Einherjar have been lost and turned into monsters called Naglfar. After killing this large boss, they will be freed and you can use them in battle. If you stand still, the Einherjar will talk amongst themselves, so if story and world building is something you like, hang out for a bit, you might hear something cool. People made fun of the original Valkyrie profile for being a, quote, after-school special on teen suicide, end quote. And even though this is a little bit of that, it's more mature and less whiny than that old PS1 game. As for endings, there are 4 of them, and they're all pretty easy to get, just do stuff. I'm not going to spoil details, but the true ending is basically the power of love and friendship overcoming a fate that a god has imposed upon you, and if you didn't see that coming, then welcome to Japanese RPGs. I'll be real brief here. The graphics are tolerable, and the frame rate is consistent, at least on the PS5. I hope that the PC version can eliminate the bloom and motion blur, and maybe enable the game to run over 60 FPS. That would be worth checking out. The particle effects are toned down, but sometimes get in the way in the heat of combat. There is a bit of uncanny valley weirdness for the characters' faces. The mouth movements are a bit too subtle, and sometimes it doesn't even look like they're talking. It also is really easy to tell when the US localization changed some of the mouth movements to fit the dialogue. I can forgive most of this, but I think the graphics could have spent more time in the air fryer. When your hub world looks like a $20 indie game, you probably cut some corners. Some polish would have made this better. There was only one major bug that I noticed. One time my Einherjar got locked in place and I couldn't summon him or use lightning magic till the next major loading zone. The game runs smooth otherwise, and I'm happy with the presentation. Combat is fun and somewhat satisfying. It's not groundbreaking, but it has some replay value. Your HUD has a green health bar, a blue soul gauge, and orange crystals that allow you to use divine arts. You refill these crystals by attacking enemies. Enemies also drop various items, souls to refill your different gauges, and gems to upgrade weapons and stats. Valkyrie has 3 stat skill trees, attack, defense, and recovery, which have various abilities, like longer health and soul gauges, special charge and parry attacks, and more damage. Each ability on the skill tree that you unlock uses up a pool of SP, up to 500. But don't worry, you have to get to the end game before you're even close to filling up the 500 SP. Basic combat is pretty standard. You have a block, a dash evade, jump, double jump when upgraded, and basic sword combos. There is a heavy transition attack that can be used after basic attacks to create new combos. There are various ways to start air combos as well. Weapons gain attack power and learn new skills as you level up. While the weapons are different in speed and strength, they all have the same progression path. They get additional attacks after evading, blocking, and double jumping. Pressing the triangle button after an action will allow you to use these movement-based techniques for each weapon when they are acquired. You have a grappling hook, or soul chain, that allows you to pull yourself up to certain points and even pull yourself straight to enemies. You can start an attack while you are being pulled forward. It's really nice to get out of trouble or stick and move when fighting evasive enemies. You can summon Einherjar warriors with R1 and use divine arts like this lightning spell with R2. You will also need to summon these warriors to get past objects like a rock in the way. Einherjar each have an elemental attribute and each enemy has an elemental weakness. Using the appropriate elemental spell or warrior will allow you to hit weaknesses and crush your enemies, allowing you to inflict the most damage while they are stunned. This works with certain bosses too. Your spells are stronger if they match your currently summoned Einherjar. You eventually get 4 Einherjar that you can summon at any time, if you have enough soul gauge. You can even summon all 4 at once if you want. Their attacks will also build up your arts gauge as they attack. The more times you summon your Einherjar, the more their damage goes up, encouraging you to do so. At the end of a mission, they give you this nice little recap screen to show you how they have progressed. People compare this combat system to Bayonetta just because there are some slow motion evade animations, but it's more like Ys or Amalur Reckoning. But Ys is really fast, and Amalur Reckoning actually had animation canceling. Oh, by the way, there is no animation canceling. I often get hit by attacks that I should have been able to dodge because I saw them coming, but I can't dodge if I'm mid-attack. The basic combos are also a bit stiff, but the weapon skills allow you to zip around and make things much more snappy. Remember kids, animation lock is bad because enemies have large combos and you might get staggered and you can't always break out. Enemy attacks are telegraphed strangely and sometimes come out of nowhere. The enemy command grabs and unblockables are not always evident because the UI indicator is hard to see. The game will become stiff and not fun to play. Why should I have to wait for my enemies to attack when I could just use my reflexes in a fun fluid combat system? Remember kids, animation lock turns an awesome game into a disappointing pile of dog turds. The parry, evade, and counter system also seems to have some weird detection. It's like reverse Dark Souls. It seems to reward dodging early rather than when the attack happens. I still have some trouble with it even after my 15 hours of playtime. I still have to play that fun game called Will My Evade Parry Work? The animation lock, weird parry system, and other small issues make the game less fun than it could be. Why don't you want me to have fun, Soleil? Here is a breakdown of the weapons. They have hard to pronounce names, so I'm going to simplify them. The sword, your first weapon, is good for zipping around and doing mid-range combos. The fast sword is flashy and good for quick attacks, but it has a bit of a build-up. The long sword is for distance attacks and armor piercing. I didn't really use it because it was kind of slow and boring. I didn't really use the slow spear either, but it's pretty strong and probably stuns enemies. My favorite weapon, the fast spear, is really good, but you will fly around and miss enemies a lot. It's fun but wonky. I like it because it can do quick and fast hits, especially when dashing. Lastly, the magic mace is about as fast as your default sword. It has cool projectiles on heavy hits and gets a bonus based on your magic stat. If you are like me and don't like slower weapons, the mace is a good balanced weapon plus, magic. They limit you on how fast you can level up because not all gems are available in all missions for upgrading. I like that there is a natural progression and you shouldn't ever have to grind. You can increase your weapon proficiency, which will raise your attack power and your attack speed just a little bit. The combat has a lot to be desired, but I enjoy it. It has a lot of flexibility with combos and skills. There isn't a lot of build diversity, but there is one particular build that you should definitely try in the endgame. Close to the end of the game, when you finally get the Nibelung Valesti skill, take out enemies using the skill, use dodge charging attacks with a fast spear to get your gauge back quickly. You can also go back to a save spot and replenish your arts gauge since enemies don't respawn, or you can just use a potion to refill your gauge, or just summon all 4 Einherjar at once to get it back quickly. Also, if you take your spear and sock it in arts and soul gauge regeneration, then you can spam it quite often. Combat is solid and some of the battles are pretty fun. It needs a few tweaks, but it's not actually my main issue with the game. We'll talk about that and other problems next in the Your healing spell has iframes that can be cancelled into, which makes me wonder, why not do this with attacks? There are all kinds of attacks that connect in weird ways and some don't track the enemy. Why does Valkyrie's hair do this weird jittering around instead of just flowing in the wind like normal? Later bosses have large AoEs that do a ton of damage and they spam them constantly. Some of them even put you in unskippable animations. It's a close range melee focused game, you idiots. The Soul Chain secret areas can be a little wonky to find. It doesn't always light up until you are really close. Also, there are some badly designed grapple jumping puzzles, so no thanks. The pronunciation in this game can be pretty bad.
We're traveling together. I'm Egan.
God, my warrior.
I'm Egan.
You guys gotta figure out what his name is. The one thing they get consistent is pronouncing the warrior's Einherjar.
Becoming your Einherjar.
I'm sorry, it has an I in it. They should have pronounced it Einherjar like I've been doing in this video, or Einherjar like I've heard it pronounced in Nordic. The rest are probably not 100% correct either, and if you know a lot about the Nordic language, please sound off in the comments. I really want to know. One of my main gripes about the story is that it doesn't show the world of Norse myth very well. Only Midgard, Asgard, and then eventually you get to Niflheim and it's a frickin' hole in the ground. Boring. They mention Yggdrasil, but they don't show much. The Norse world is so cool, but even when designing locations, look at some of the places you went to in the original VP compared to the boring, lazy design of Elysium. The various locations in the game 2 decades ago are so interesting. They play with the idea of time and place, fantasy and reality. This game is gray, sparse, and a total letdown by comparison. Okay, spoilers here in 3, 2, 1. Hildy goes out like a little bitch. I am angry that she was used so much and just ended up as a lousy, tragic character. She could have been cool. Her role in this story is bullshit. They said they are making her playable. It's time to fix this. Give her a chance to be a character for once and not just a crappy plot device. Okay, spoilers over. So, that's about it. I can't think of anything else to complain about. Nothing at all. Nope. Nothing whatsoever. That's about it. I think we got all the bases covered. Nothing to see here. Oh yeah, the camera. The camera sucks. It's pulled in and not adjustable, and the small environments don't lend themselves to it. The camera pulls in immediately when near a wall or even during certain attacks in a combo. It ruins the fun of the combat because that awesome finisher you've been comboing towards can't be seen or mixes in with the particle effects of spells and takes away the satisfaction of the combat. I will spend $60 to buy this on PC just for the mods that pull back the camera or an in-game adjustment slider. Most major bosses take place in large arenas, so the issue is minimal there, but some bosses like the second Naglfar literally put mist everywhere so it clutters the screen. A lot of areas have small fighting places and the camera acts up constantly. It doesn't matter if you are locked on or not, but if you're locked on, the camera pulls in even more. Remember that because of the design of this game, you will push enemies into a corner or they will back up into one. It's unavoidable. You will be thwarted by the stupid camera at all times. You can rotate it and lock on to fix things, but mostly you will be fighting with the camera just as much as you fight the enemies. I've waited more than 13 years for a new game in the Valkyrie Profile universe that wasn't a mobile game, and what I got was this middle-of-the-road, average action RPG that is overpriced and under-delivers. I wanted more Norse myth world, a bigger story that takes chances, build diversity, 40 to 60 hours of playtime, better art, some animation canceling, slightly better graphics, and more of everything, but who am I kidding? They had to charge $60 for a $40 game because Tri-Ace is broke. Certain reviewers are saying that Squeenix is sending out this game to die like a fallen warrior, but I'm happy that they made a new VP game in the first place. I'm happy that this game is tolerable and not a total dumpster fire. Beggars can't be choosers, and I have been a beggar for a long time. I wish things were different, but this is what we have to deal with. Looking on the bright side though, in 2022 I am getting a new Valkyrie Profile and a new Star Ocean game. It's a miracle in my eyes. It's not the epic new addition to the series I wanted, but I'm able to accept it for what it is. In the end, the game isn't 20 hours, it's more like 12 to 15. You can try the hard mode, level up all the weapons, try to get the best ending, practice combos. They said they are adding more content that will extend the game, so it might bring me back in a few months. Final verdict. This hurts me to say, but if you're not a Valkyrie Profile fan, have money to burn, or really need an action game right now, wait for a sale and give it a go later. It's not really worth it right now. For giving me a barely above average version of a game in a series that used to be amazing, I give Valkyrie Elysium an average score of 3 mispronounced Galler Yaller horns out of 5. This is Dan T of Twisted Banana Productions signing off. Their souls have been released. We have no reason to remain here.
Silent! Allow me to think without your petty concerns.